All right. Well, right now what's gonna end up happening is we're gonna be going live. So
All right, dude. I'm ready.
you ready to go? All right. So we're live. We are live.
I can't see myself.
So
What happened to my video? I can't see. Hold on.
all right. So I'm gonna allow the music to play so you could jump in real quick, probably for about a minute or whatever, and then we'll skip to the first scene, and then we'll be ready to go. But you tell me when you're ready, and I'll go ahead and skip it.
Oh no, we're good.
You're good?
Whenever,
Okay.
whenever you want to go.
All right. Well, we can go live now. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here tonight.
What's
We
happening,
are live.
everybody?
We are live. You're not gonna see the first. You're not gonna see RJ on the first clip, which is just a introduction clip, but you will see him thereafter. So RJ, if you wanna go ahead and chime in and let the folks know what we got for him tonight, or whatever it is that you want to speak about.
Well, we got a lot of really good stuff for you tonight. We're going to be uh, talking about kind of a recap of what's been happening over the last several weeks. That I got to turn off my audio there because it'll be there. We go. And looking forward to chopping it up and getting the knuckleheads on board. And hopefully, we'll get a lot of knuckleheads on board. And Stephen Ramsey, what's up? Welcome to the show. Nicole Murray, I'm here because of JMix exclusives alert. He got me here. Thank you, JMix. Yes, that is true. In the house. And we are being live stream simulcast on the JMix channel, to catch the subscribers there. So we're going to get some people in the conversation that may not have seen some of the great things that we've had to offer, and we'll do them in recap. Won't be forever, but Stephen Ramsey, quote of the day: I'm here because I'm a knucklehead. Damn straight. All my knuckleheads. Yep, that's right. Fun thing about it is we get to call each other knuckleheads, and it's a term of endearment. Are you there, Kazi?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just making sure everything is good to go as far as
Awesome.
audio or whatnot. But it seems like everything's good. So just getting my playback. But yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here.
Jimmy Parsons, welcome, welcome, welcome. Q Knucklehead Q Max 21. Welcome, welcome. East Yesler TV, Kazi. That's what he's shouting out from my man JMKAZE. Of course, you know me. I'm the king of the knuckleheads, RJ Bond. Here, just dishing out the facts as we see them. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, because there's been a little bit of talk and a little bit of conversation on some of the, well, let's just say another channel, shall we? And I've been very cautious to make the shows these days and the last season of the podcast to be about the the facts, to be about what's being heard and seen by the Vegas police in the investigation. Again, one of the things that's important to note is that over the last 20 years, the only people that really that you've heard from are death row people. You've heard from Frank, Michael Moore, you've heard from Reggie, you've heard from Shug, you've heard from everybody that were the death row people, but you really haven't heard much from kind of like the rest of the world when it came to who thinks what and who speculates what. And so it's been interesting because you had that dynamic of some people from death row said this, some people from death row said that, and it's back and forth. And you have a couple of people that are caught in the middle. You got your reporters and you got your, kind of day job cops that are, speculating on things, and they go back and forth. And we've been trying to stick to it and doing the old shows, and we've reflected on this on the podcast too, Kazi. We definitely have a style of the show that's a lot different than when Jesse and I were doing the shows. That was a great era, and we had a lot of fun doing those shows. Brought out the fart gun and all that stuff. Everybody who remembers that, we had a good time. But one of the things that I thought was important that we get away from was, again, essentially name calling. Everybody can be guilty of it from time to time. It's a very easy trap to fall into. But I heard on the other side the news over on Bomb Last there that they you know, got respect for me, but then they turn around and they start using terms like the groupie and the crackhead. Well, you know, unless you're friends with somebody and that's a term of endearment, I mean, essentially that's name calling. And, you know, I think name calling is always the last resort of somebody who's got nothing left in their arsenal. They resort to name calling and they resort to putting people down. And of course, that's been the way that it's been through the entire narrative and the investigation from certain people in the death row camp. That whenever Vegas or somebody else doesn't agree with the narrative, whenever they don't agree with the Orlando Anderson narrative, suddenly it's Vegas isn't not doing their job. The cops don't know what they're doing. They just want to, you know, hide the case. They don't want to prosecute the case. And so they're incompetent and they miss things and that, you know, and that again, just because you don't buy the narrative. Well, suddenly we're up there and we're talking and we're bringing facts out and we're not necessarily calling names, but we're bringing the facts out and letting people decide where that might lead them. We're definitely out to certainly throw rocks at a certain narrative that's out there, and it's largely not just because I don't believe it, but because I don't think the evidence supports it at all. And now we're actually starting to see what that evidence really is. And of course, the minute that we say that, you know, and I go back to Brent Becker's comment, that Brent Becker says flat out, we never considered Orlando Anderson to be a suspect. Well, if that's from the investigator in the case, that's it. I mean, that's not ambiguous. I don't think, Kazi. Does that sound like an ambiguous statement? Like he's not sure about what they know and what they don't know?
No, I'm pretty sure he knew what he was talking about. I mean, he sounded pretty confident to me.
Yeah. So, you know, so he's definitely, and that's a quote that was in the Kathy Scott's book, the third edition of the Killing of Tupac Shakur. I didn't like the first version, so of course I didn't read the second or third version. I just happened to stumble across it when I was looking up some other stuff, and sure enough, you know, he has that quote, and it's like she just chooses not to believe him, which I think is interesting. But he says they never did, and the reason that he said they don't consider Orlando Anderson to be a suspect is because, and I quote, this is Vegas police talking, and I quote, because he has an alibi. Orlando Anderson had an alibi for that night. That is coming from the body of law enforcement officers that were actually charged with investigating the case, not LAPD, who wanted to try to insert themselves in the middle of things, not the Compton PD, who tried to assert themselves in the middle of things, and neither one of them really had much to give. In fact, really weren't the charged office with investigating anything. They just tried to throw what they could at it to support the narrative. And that's what they had to say. It's pretty simple, really, right off the bat. It's pretty simple math. But nonetheless, I want to get back to the name calling. You know, people can say that they respect me, and that's fine. If you respect me, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that. You know, I've walked away from doing a lot of broadcasts that might imply certain people and make it a very personal type of broadcast. But if you have respect for me, then making fun of my friends doesn't help. And you got to ask the question, okay, so if we're going to start throwing labels around, of course, I was called the racist and I was called the old white man, which is kind of funny because for somebody who's likes to go around pointing everybody else out and calling everybody else a racist, what do you call it when you call RJ Bond the old white man? Okay, that sounds pretty racist to me. So, you know, let's those who have a clean house, you know, start throwing rocks, okay? But more importantly, again, it's more name calling. We don't need to name call. We need to bring out the facts. We need to talk about things as they are. We don't need to name call people. It's very junior high, and if you're into that kind of thing, I guess it is. I guess, you know, people enjoy that kind of thing. There's always people that like to go to gladiator fights, so you know they like to see the bloodletting happen. But we're not doing it. We're not calling names at anybody, and I would really appreciate it and ask people to just fucking grow up and stop calling names. If you have respect, if you say you have respect for me, then don't call me names. If you have respect for people that are my friends, don't call them names. Just stick to your own lane. If you got information that helps disprove things, that's fine. By the way, I don't think that admitting that there is a cream color Cadillac that was one of the death row vehicles and the death row leased it, I'm not sure that that exactly helps side the narrative and be like, oh yeah, well we had a off-white Cadillac or a cream Cadillac. That must have been the one they were talking about. Well, we don't know what they were talking about. Okay, we don't know if that was the one or that's not the one. And of course, the person who made that comment wasn't there. The person that made that comment was miles away at a different building doing something else. So who's to say what if that cream colored Cadillac was the Cadillac that belonged to Death Row Records and was the rental car that they talked about, or whether or not you're just being thrown out another deflection? Okay, because again, at the end of the day, when you don't have anything else, you deflect. When you don't have anything else, you don't have any more information, you don't have anything tied together, you name call. And that was part of the reason why we stopped doing the format of shows that we were doing, because I felt like that was more getting into the humor, the satire of it, and was losing focus on the true facts in the investigation. So that's what I have to say on that note. We'll talk a minute about being a culture vulture, but let's read some comments, man. We're getting comments. Knuckleheads are in the house. So let's see what's happening out there in the world. Let's see here. Kazi gets a compliment. The audio has gotten a lot better. Thank you, Kazi. Are you still there?
Yeah, I worked day and night to make certain that it worked.
I love it. Animal X13 Lozano, welcome to the show. Stephen Ramsey, East Yesler, welcome to the show. I'm going to screw that up every time I say it. I'm just tongue-tied today. I don't know what the deal is like that. Let's see here. I Buy Houses is here. Welcome. Briley's Angels. That's a new one. I don't know who that is, and whoever they decided to take back whatever they were going to say. I Buy Houses say, thank you for changing your time. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. It is a little bit earlier so that people aren't up till all hours of the evening to watch the live show. Hopefully we'll get a few more people that are hanging out with us as a result of doing that. So I think that's kind of cool. Let's see here. JMix, yep, your stream is now live on my channel. See, so we are now broadcasting live. We're in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So jump on the podcast as you get notified on Jesse's channel. Come on, we're talking. Also, be sure to click that like, those thumbs up things. Do one of those. Give some thumbs up there, and certainly subscribe to Kazi's channel, subscribe to JMix channel, subscribe to RJ Bond's channel, okay, and the real RJ Bond. Be sure to subscribe, and that way you don't miss anything that's going on. We're going to kind of create a little bit of a communication triangle to try to get that audience out to a much broader message, for sure.
Drop the Spotify and also the iTunes. There'll be a description in the video.
Well, talk away. See, there was another thumbs up. That's right. Talk away, Kazi. Tell us about Spotify and iTunes.
Spotify every Tuesday, but we're taking a little hiatus for the next 2 weeks, but the show will be dropping, just depending on what time we wrap it up on Tuesday. It'll be out on Tuesday. Spotify, RJ Bond, What I Know, and then also on iTunes. I don't know how you find it on iTunes. I guess you just plug in your name into the search engine, RJ, or do you actually, I think the easiest way is just to click the link that's in the description. A lot of people won't do that, but if you want to find it on iTunes, because some people don't have Spotify, then you definitely want to hit that link.
It's on iTunes as well. Yeah, RJ Bond, What I Know. It's definitely on iTunes. I see it there. I check it there. We've got some comments going on that. And that's been the hardest thing about the podcast is there's not really a good place to actually make comments. On YouTube, you could do the live comments or you can post a comment on the video afterwards. The email address, rjbondwhatiknow@outlook.com. Again, rjbondwhatiknow@outlook.com. If you happen to see something that you like or want to know a little bit more about something or have a topic that you want us to talk about, please feel free to drop an email and let me know. We do read them. We do return the emails. I'm a little bit behind. I've got a couple that I'm behind on, but I will get back to your emails and all that. It's just been very busy with the likes of all of the documents that we've got. Maybe I should do the Greg Katie and go, all the documents that we've got.
Let me interject something here real quick. When you talk about the cream cutter Cadillac, do you think there's a possibility that they could go back and kind of retrace the steps and see if that vehicle was actually leased to Death Row, or get any kind of information, or is it just a dead end at this time, just because so many years have passed by already?
Well, I mean, I think it's very interesting that I've never heard anyone from death row. Now, maybe this is something that death row people told the Las Vegas police. Maybe that's in some part of the police record we don't have. They could have said something about that to the police. I don't want to lead anybody. Oh yeah, that's what we did. Okay, but they could have talked about it. I think if they offered up the information in a timely manner to the police, and of course, you're looking at a bunch of people who had no intention of telling the police anything because they think that's cool, they think that's hip, they think that that's street to not share information with the cops that might actually help solve a murder for somebody that they say they cared about so much. That's the hypocrisy of the whole thing. Yeah, I really love you, but if you die, I'm not doing shit to help you. Okay. That's the honor code, right? That's the honor of the street. Such bullshit. Anyway, at the end of the day, if there was a Cadillac and they gave it to Vegas in a timely manner, then Vegas would have brought that Cadillac or requested, subpoenaed, whatever, to bring that Cadillac to Vegas to let forensics go through it to see if it had been scrubbed, because there would be GSR gunshot residue in the windowsills of that car, because a hand came out and shot. So, within 6 inches of that car door, there was live fire happening and shells were being ejected. So gunshot residue would be on the arm, it would be on the gun, and it would most likely be on the doorway windowsill of that Cadillac. And if there was a Cadillac that matched the description of the vehicle everybody's talking about, and Vegas knew about it in a timely manner, they would probably bring that car to Vegas to have it tested. I've heard nothing about that. I don't think there's any evidence that ever happened. And I think it's largely because I don't think anybody from death row gave it up that there was a white Cadillac. And even if they say now, certain people say now that that's exactly what happened, I'd like to see proof of that. Show me some sort of proof that was actually done. So, I think nobody's heard about this in 25 years that, oh, by the way, death row happened to have a white Cadillac or a cream colored Cadillac. Thank you very much for that information. I'm not sure that really helped not move the ball, move the needle away from the narrative that we're talking about. But it was definitely there. So again, if Vegas had it, if Vegas knew about it, they would test it. And the other thing they would know is that they went to test it for gunshot residue. They do that little blue light thing, put the blue light, and they would see if somebody used bleach or something to scrub the windows down to make sure that, not the gunshot residue was scrubbed off the car. They would also see evidence of that as well, that the car had recently been cleaned. So I think that there's a lot of moving parts to the answer to that question, but I don't think it's a lost cause. We don't know what they know. Again, we know that this was at least this is the information that they're getting from witnesses. This is the information that they seem to be interested in corroborating. They had the Cadillac at the Luxor. They had the Cadillac at Shug's house. They had the Cadillac leaving Shug's house, and then there was a Cadillac involved in the shooting. So and as part of the entourage. So when you think about it, I mean, Kazi, I mean that's pretty much the easiest narrative in the world, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure the logistics of that. The Cadillac was at the last car, waited for a break and an opportunity. The lane got clear, and he just drove ahead of everybody else who was stopped. Not rocket science. Pretty simple. And the easy way to know where the entourage is and what route they're taking is to be part of the entourage. It's kind of like hiding in plain sight, wolf in sheep's clothing, whatever you want to call it. So
yeah, well, I think the Cadillac is probably long gone already. So there's really no
they
point
turned it in.
Even believing that it's still around. I mean, it's probably
they turned it in. Yeah, they turned.
Well, I mean, even beyond that point, it's probably not even. It's probably gone. It's probably in the junkyard or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Long by now. And the other thing too is that Reggie Wright said that the Cadillac was a late model Cadillac. Well, actually, I know that at the first night they were talking about a new or late model Cadillac. There's actually witnesses that say, including the woman that's in the that was in the Ranger there, and we'll flash that up in a little bit. She said it was an older model Cadillac. It was not a newer model Cadillac. It was an older model Cadillac, which might look a lot like the older model Lincoln. We got a bunch of people honking their horns if you hear it in the background. It's because, by the way, I want to say congratulations to all the graduates. If your family had graduates, either graduating from junior high or high school, today was the day they were handing out here in California They were handing out diplomas and they were handing out honor roll and they were giving good grades to the kids. So, in the midst of all this lockdown, it is a time for celebrating. And I'm glad that as a parent, I'm glad that we can celebrate our kids graduating. And, they didn't get to walk the aisle like we all did. And they didn't get to have the big old pomp and circumstance and the prom and the whole thing. They really got robbed on that. But I want to say, if your family is having a graduate, tell them congratulations for us. I'll give them a big knucklehead shout. And that's what. But if you hear that honking in the background, that's what it's all about. There is actually, I think it's Suge Knight's entourage back there.
Yeah, you sure that's not the cream color Cadillac that's circling?
Yeah, it's the cream color Cadillac is honking. They want me to see it, and it's part of the entourage. They finally ended up coming by my house, so it's true.
Yeah.
So all right. So questions. We got questions. Okay. So jumping back up here a little bit. Jhot 24/7, welcome to the show. Says, I think Orlando Anderson was known to the local authorities, like Reggie Wright Sr. and Tim Brennan, Bobby Ladd. Maybe that's why Orlando was chosen into Patsy. He didn't shoot at Blondie and Ladd. Didn't he shoot at Blondie and Ladd? I don't know. I don't know what to believe from Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd. Let me just put it that way, okay? Because I don't know them. I know that they have a mixed reputation. Some people speak well of them. Some people don't. I guess that could be said for anybody. But I know that a lot of the information that they've given out over the years has been subject to a little bit of scrutiny. So I'm a little dubious on some of the things they say. And of course, it would fit the narrative completely if Orlando Anderson was the guy that was shooting at cops. That would make him look like a bad guy.
Well,
and it may have been, to your point, it may have been exactly why,
well, I know you're going to catch your thought there, but think about all the things that he had done beforehand, or all the things that he was alleged to have done. So he steals a chain or attempts to steal a chain. He shoots at the police, okay, and then he kills Suge's homeboy supposedly, and he does all these things, and he's like the Teflon Don. He never gets arrested, and he never gets prosecuted for anything. So it's really hard to believe that Orlando Anderson is a suspect in this supposed murder when he's done all these things leading up to this, and he's never gotten arrested. So I beg to question, how come he didn't get arrested if he was shooting at the car and they know it was him? But the other thing too that kind of kills their credibility, in my opinion, is they say they found the Glock, right? But then they have no proof of it. They this is the
they found the Glock, and then they found the Glock and it wasn't the Glock.
Right.
Okay, exactly. So they made a lot of shouting about it, said it was, and then it wasn't. That's like I found King Tut's tomb. No, I didn't. Or I found the Ark of the Covenant. No, I didn't. Okay, it's all right. Non-issue. Hey, Kazi, throw the statements up. We're talking about the Cadillac, so let's go back over it again for those of you who might have missed it. It's a cool thing. Let's look at the first. Let's look at the cop that was stationed at Suge Knight's house, because I love the inspiration and the learning curve of people that watch other channels. Because again, I'm not going to insult the audience there. But more importantly, the person who's bringing the message couldn't even get the story right. And it's no wonder that people there are misled, or people there, are thinking one thing, because they're not being brought the facts. They're not being brought the truth to how things are. And so we want to do that. Were you able to get that up there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that there's a bit of a lag.
Yeah, we're there.
So
it's up there. It's up there.
All right.
Yeah.
And this is the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officer who was at Suge Knight's house, and the reason that he was there is that he was there to be paid overtime by arguably the homeowners association, and the reason that he was there was because he was being paid to be there just in case some shit broke out at Suge Knight's house if they had a party that night instead of at Club 662. But we want to emphasize this was a Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officer. And you know what, to be honest with you, he could probably care less about Tupac and Biggie or Suge or anybody else. He doesn't care. He's a cop. He's making some overtime. He's working Joe, and he's there, and he's at the estates there, and he sees the entourage come, and so he's on alert because, they're worried about things getting out of hand like they did at Can-Am Studios all the time. So he's there, and as he says, the purpose of the assignment was to maintain security for a potentially disruptive party located inside the estates. and we know who that would be. So he makes the comment, at approximately 2200 hours, a caravan of approximately 15 vehicles arrived at the guard gate, all seeking entry into the night residence. Now, I did a quick graphic, and I wish I had given it to you, Kazi, because I have it and I put it together. I threw a graphic together that using Google Earth and where Suge Knight's house was, the location of that. You know, hey, Kazi, if I sent that over to you, do you think you might be able to throw it up there for everybody? I don't mind taking, you know, precious seconds of a live stream to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and send it to me.
Let me yeah, I'm going to do that. Kazi, talk for a minute, because you know I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Maybe you can handle a couple of questions and do some shout outs. What do you say about that, buddy?
I'll go ahead and get some shout outs right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to concentrate here on these things, but I do want to give a shout out to JMix. I appreciate him actually doing the streaming the live stream on his channel. And if you get an opportunity to go to his channel, please do. There's a lot of good content on there. I mean, I'm even going back and looking at stuff from 2014 and 2015, kind of just refreshing my mind on things that took place. And there's a lot of great information, so appreciate that. And then everybody else that's here tonight, UCSR TV, appreciate you here being here. Ryan Gregory, Glock Magic, Brandon Metcalf, Jim City Charles. Jim City Charles, is that I don't know if is that a reference to Chicago? Let's see here. That used to be my backyard where I used to live back in the day. Let's see here. Jake Styles, Loose Cannon, 88, Stephen Perry, Nicole Murray, Stephen Ramsey. Sorry, I'm reading this kind of slow because I had to go up and down the actual chat. Big 21. Go to Big 21's channel. He's starting his channel up, and he's dropping some content there. J-Hot.
Nice. What kind of content is it? What kind of content is he dropping?
He's just dropping some videos, just things that are happening on a daily, you know, controversial things such as the Minnesota police officers. And
yeah,
you know,
well, we can speak about that. We can speak about that for a minute. I'm going to talk about something else for a minute that I'm got to be honest with you, and I'm talking to the audience because I'm a little disappointed in some of our audience, but I don't think it was our audience. I think it was the haters that wanted to just get out there and cause trouble for everybody. In the podcast a few weeks ago, we played a song by one of my friends and an artist called Third Degree, and the song was a song called Black Lives Don't Matter. And I thought, especially at the time, and that was certainly before all of this nonsense that happened, when the other guy was beaten up and killed by the rednecks that were doing that, you know, the cop and everybody that did that guy, and now we have this, you know. I never thought there could be a song that could be more timely and more appropriate for the outrage that we're seeing all over the country right now with everybody who's protesting, looting, they're breaking things, burning buildings. I mean, there's a lot of outrage out there. My problem is I can't understand why somebody on YouTube, when we played that song, which is, if you listen to it, it's a great artistic piece. It talks about channeling that anger about, you know, what's going on in our country right now. Couldn't be a more timely anthem. And yet somebody flagged it on YouTube and said that they were offended by it. And so we got a community strike. Good news is I think a lot of that nonsense is going to go away over the next few weeks as the president puts in some policies with these social medias like YouTube and Twitter and the other ones that tend to censor people's comments about things. I've been the victim of that. You know, we talk about issues that are important, and we do talk about things that might be controversial to some, but that's no reason to shut us up. That's a reason to put the word out. It's a free country. We should be allowed our free speech, and yet somebody can flag it for what they call community guidelines. I don't know what community they live in, but community guidelines, like everybody be nice and play. Well, the world isn't necessarily a nice place. And yet they'll let Joe Rogan get away with murder, and they'll let other people get away. And that's actually why Joe Rogan's moving over to Spotify. He's done with YouTube because they did the same kind of thing there. If you say something that they don't like, they censor it. And, you know, Kazi, to put this in perspective for you, go back to the old days where we had telephones. We didn't even have the internet. We had telephones. And you had Ma Bell, who was there, AT&T, who basically ran every single telephone that was in the United States. They had a hand in. They had the Bell system. It was one big company that controlled all the telephones, all the communication in America. Can you imagine if they sat on top of and eavesdropped in to every phone call that people made, and when somebody said something that they didn't like or that they thought was wrong, that they would just cut your line and take your phone line away from you so you couldn't make a phone call? Can you imagine what that would have been like?
Yeah, well, I
Well,
think
well
you,
that's I yeah.
don't think you can get away with that kind of behavior today.
Well, the thing is it's no different. I mean, what YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, what these guys are doing is they're saying, well, you're playing in our field, so that gives us the reason to, make decisions on your behavior based on some arbitrary code or standards that we do. But free speech is free speech. I mean, you can't have neutrality and say, well, we shouldn't be liable for our users' content because it's a free country. They can say whatever they want to say. Well, that's not true, because on the other hand, that's not what they tell everybody on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. They hold them to say, well, that doesn't make us feel good that you said that. We don't like the words that you used. It's insensitive. Somebody might get offended by it in this outrage culture that we live in. And that noose is tightening and tightening. And they do that and they throw things off. So essentially, the government's right. They are being editors. They are being people who are exercising editorial content, just like as if the phone company were listening to what you said. And if you said something that they found to be outrageous or that they didn't like, that they could just cut your phone line and you wouldn't be able to call anybody ever again. It is that important that we talk about these things. So ultimately, it's important that artists like Third Degree get their work out there. Don't know why somebody got offended by it, but to be perfectly honest with you, that's the most ironic thing in the world, because Third Degree, if you actually knew him, is such a huge advocate for Black Lives Matter, and that was why the song was what it was. I guess nobody understands irony anymore. Nobody understands that, but that was the message. Black lives do matter, and that was why he was upset about it. And yet somebody decided they were going to get outraged by it. So I don't know if you guys know who did it, or if you did it. It's a shame, but I think it was probably the haters. And what else is new? Because again, if you don't have anything to say, you call somebody names and try to get them demonetized or try to get deplatformed, if you will, for another reason there.
All right, RJ. Sorry. Yeah, good point.
Okay.
Well taken, I think, by the whole community. They certainly can understand what's taking place. But we have is the next scene is going to be the actual entourage picture. So are you okay showing that one first? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
All right. So there we go.
Which one are you showing? The Luxor one or the States?
Actually, the Luxor one, and it's coming up right now. There you go.
Okay.
It's on. It should be up.
All right. Okay. So what you'll see here is and again, a little bit of a lag, so I kind of stall for a minute until I actually see the picture itself. What you see here is a Google Earth picture of the Luxor itself. And this is the valet area where people actually get on and get into their cars in a fight night. I can imagine how many cars would be around there. People coming and going. On a Saturday night at a casino, it's a madhouse anyway. And what I've got there is, I don't even think there's 15 cars there. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 cars there. And that's how long the procession of cars would be if there were 14 cars, give or take. Now, that's presuming that the valet went out and got every single death row car in the entourage and parked them right behind each other, and there wasn't a single other person on the planet who had given a valet ticket and had a valet bring their car up. I mean, conceivably, there could have been, that Cadillac could have been 30 cars behind Suge Knight's car, just in the way that they load the valet and get people in the cars. That's just the reality. Anybody who's done valet knows that. You can be right behind somebody. You guys park at the same time. If you present your valet tickets at the same time, sometimes your car comes up behind it, and sometimes your car doesn't come up for 3 or 4 cars. So there can be certainly a lot of the weight for the cars and stuff like that. So ultimately, I wanted to show this because we know that the first witness, who was the witness who was a security guy who was in the valet area. He was not a valet. Let's get the facts right. He was a security guy that worked for Luxor Security, had to pass all kinds of background checks, had to be a pretty stand-up individual, I'm sure, to work casino security. And he gave a statement to Vegas police and said that all the cars that were going in there and coming out of Luxor, the last one there was a cream color or off-white or a white Cadillac, a light-colored Cadillac. Remember, this is nighttime. A cream-colored Cadillac can look like a white Cadillac if it's under an orange sodium light or it's under some sort of a night, a street light or something like that. It can very easily be confused for one color for another at night. And again, they had what? 10 seconds to recognize the car. So I think that bears a lot to it. Now, let's flip to the other screen, because that was actually more in line with what we were talking about. And I do thank the good folks at Google Earth who are very good about, putting these things down there and we can look at it. I was going to do some animation with it. Never got the time to do it, but we'll do that. Kazi, can you throw the picture of Knight's house up there?
Yeah, it's there already. Oh, yeah, by the way, today's sponsor is Dickey's Barbecue.
Dickey's Barbecue. You can always go to Dickey's Barbecue. Great stuff. Order the turkey first because it's the one that goes the fastest. They have excellent turkey, brisket, chicken, name it, barbecue. The sides are great. Coleslaw is really good. If you never had the coleslaw there, the coleslaw is really good. But Dickey's Barbecue, always, always a good meal. So, all right. What we have here on this video, and again, the reason it's dark is because it was, of course, nighttime. And you'll notice that we have the presentation of the vehicles as they showed up. And we're going back 15 cars in this picture because I wanted you guys to actually be there. I wanted to put you right there in the middle of what was going on so you could understand the significance of it. And one of the things that I realized right away was that 15 cars back, they're almost a full block away from the guard gate. There, it's probably half a block because, that whole thing's a giant block. But you can see there's a whole nother intersection right there. So if there had been 4 or 5 more cars, that white Cadillac or the white car that was at the end of the entourage could have actually been literally around the corner from it. So you can see that. But of course, the important thing to look at is that if Suge Knight was right there next to that guard gate and was going through and he went to his house and called it and said, let everybody in, he would not see that white car. Okay, there's no line of sight there to say that Suge Knight would have had any idea that there was a white car. And I reject out of hand anybody who says that Suge Knight knew every single car that was in that entourage. Bullshit. No, I don't believe that for a minute. That he would know. He's interested in getting there. Sure, he's interested in knowing that his closest people are around him. Other than that, who's 15, 12 cars, 13 cars? He doesn't know who's there. And the other thing is that the police officer did say that Suge Knight would call it in. And that's the thing about it. He wouldn't just go to the guard gate and said, hey, everybody behind me, let them in too. What he would do is he'd go around to his house because his house is literally right there where that red pin is. That's Suge Knight's house. So if the car's parked around there, he goes in the house, he calls the security gate and says, hey, there's a bunch of cars coming in there. Just let them all in because they're going to be streaming in. And they're saying they're here for me. And it got so busy to the point with the guard gate, the people at the guard gate there, Allied Security that worked the gate, they weren't even taking plate numbers down anymore. And Frank Alexander actually told the Vegas cops that there were many times that the guards, and I'm hoping that the guards don't lose their jobs as a result of this, that the estates take down the plate numbers, guys. They didn't even bother to take the plate numbers down of all the cars going in there because there were just a lot of cars. And according to Frank, that didn't happen. I guess it happened all the time that they didn't make good record of the plates that were there. So this cop's there. He sees the cream color white Cadillac. By the time he's interviewed, it's pretty common knowledge on the news. It's pretty common knowledge in the paper, pretty common knowledge because he is a Vegas Metro cop, that there might have been an APB out, an all points bulletin. Be on the lookout for a BOLO is what they call that. Be on the lookout for a white color cream Cadillac that may have been a suspect vehicle used in a shooting from the night before or that week. So again, and another thing that's important to remember about this, and people overlook this all the time. When the cream color Cadillac and the police started the investigation on Tupac Shakur, it wasn't a murder. It didn't become a murder for a week. So it was a shooting, an act of violence, an attempted murder. But if he had died that night, you would have had a completely different cadence to the investigation, I believe, than you would have had it not been a week later that he finally died, because then it becomes a murder. He finally dies, then it's a murder, and now we have a murder investigation. What we have before is an act of violence, a shooting that happened on the street. Suge Knight got grazed. Tupac definitely got shot. So it's an assault with a deadly weapon. It's a shooting. It could be a attempted murder, but it's not a murder. So the interest in the suspect vehicle is there, but and Kathy Scott spent a lot of time talking about how they didn't put roadblocks and they didn't call ahead to state line and they didn't do this, do that. Again, it wasn't a murder. If it had been a murder, he'd been shot dead right there on the spot. They could have clamped down that city pretty quick. But I think the thought was that it wasn't going to be a capital crime. Tupac was rushed to the hospital. It was days before he died. Maybe there was the thought, as there was in the entourage, and a lot of people around Tupac, that he might make it. Okay? So on the big priority list of what Vegas has to investigate, murder is clearly at the top of the list. That's the most important thing. It's a capital crime. But in terms of anything below it, as it starts to go down, attempted murder and a shooting, it might have followed a beating or gang activity, it may move itself down the priority list, okay? And I think that that's really important to state there, I think I think that's something that is really important to point out. And people lose track of that they think that it was just a murder from day one. It wasn't. It wasn't a murder for a week.
Yeah, I think there's some comments in the comment section. One person had asked, what about the cameras at the gate? I think that's pretty much irrelevant at this point. I mean, I don't think that the police went over there and got that evidence, the guard gate. But I mean, if anything, I mean, it doesn't prove a whole lot unless the cameras were in a vantage point to where they could see whoever the individuals were in the car, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like I said, there was a clear idea that it was a suspect vehicle. When this cop found out that it was a suspect vehicle that had that description, he made note of the fact. And that's something that's really important. It must have stuck out. It wasn't raining Cadillacs like where every other car was a Cadillac, because it stuck out to him that the last car was a light color white Cadillac. So if you have a suspect vehicle that's of that make and model, then clearly, it's got to be of note that it was part of the entourage. Otherwise, they would have said, well, hell, there's stuff that happens all the time. We get white Cadillacs all the time. So that's of no particular interest. And the same thing with the valet, talking about that white or cream color Cadillac there. So I don't think that the one person saying, oh, yeah, well, we had Death Row had a white cream color Cadillac. I don't think that disproves anything. In fact, if it does anything, I think it lends credence. It basically verified or validated what both the valet guy, the security guy, and the valet and the cop said, and it brings that to light.
I think we also have a special guest that wants to call in.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm enjoying the stream.
Nice. You called just to say that?
Yeah, that's what I called for. Well, there seems to be some confusion in the chat on my channel. I'm watching them both. I'm full ADD trying to watch both chats. So I guess what I'm trying to do, and you guys have done a little bit, is clarify. So you have a document that is stating that the Cadillac, a white Cadillac, was leaving the MGM behind the entourage.
No, leaving the Luxor. Leaving the Luxor. Yeah, they went from the MGM. Yeah, they went from the MGM to the Luxor. They walked over to the Luxor, where a lot of their cars, including Frank's car, were parked, because a lot of them were staying at the Luxor, and they used the valet to get their cars out of valet parking, and that entourage left the Luxor and went to Suge Knight's house. The security guy who worked at the Luxor observed that the last car in the entourage, or at least one of the cars noted in that entourage, was a white or cream color Cadillac. So I hope that helps clear that up a little bit.
That's actually on the screen as well. I just threw that up there. the security guard statement.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, there he is. Yeah.
Well, how does it jive with Keith Davis's story?
Well, it doesn't. That's the whole point. It doesn't jive with Keith Davis's story at all. And you know, and again, and we mentioned this a little bit in the podcast, and I'll walk it back just a minute to say that, listen, either you think a piece of evidence has value or it doesn't. That's what you have to start with. You say, okay, I've got a piece of evidence that says there was an off-white color Cadillac in the death row procession, both going from the Luxor to Suge Knight's house, leaving Suge Knight's house on the way to Club 662, where, by the way, a car matching that vehicle description was involved in the shooting. Okay? Now, you can either say, so what? Got nothing to do with anything. Who cares? Or you can say, that may have value. We have to find out. That may have more value. So you start asking things around. What you see here is old Angel, who was working security at the Luxor Hotel. He was in the valet area when Tupac and his group of friends were entering their vehicles to leave the property. The vehicles he recalls leaving with Shakur were a white Dodge Caravan, a black BMW or Mercedes, and 2 other black vehicles. 2 white vehicles also left, and he says, behind the group. He said he thought the last white car was a Cadillac or a Buick with 4 white males. Or, I'm sorry, 4 black males, excuse me. And that's really important. This is something that Metro made specific note of. I mean, they get 1,000 leads saying that Oprah did it and everything like that. They don't mention every possible lead that they get. They mention the ones that have relevance to the investigation. And of course it's important. If a white color Cadillac, moments after they leave Suge Knight's house, a Cadillac of white or cream color was involved in the shooting, what are the odds? What's the coincidence that they have a car in the entourage, leaves with it, and just by a miracle, another white Cadillac shows up and starts the shooting? Okay, that is important. And what I think is more important, to Jesse's point, and you knew I was going to get around to it. It absolutely, if that Cadillac has any relevance at all, if there's any importance to it at all, it's that it completely obliterates Orlando Anderson's narrative, because for the Cadillac to be leaving with the rest of the group, I don't care how slow the valet is, Orlando Anderson would have had to have left when Tupac and Suge and all them ran out of there. Instead, he was around talking to the police, and Brent Becker says that he was actually taken after the police were done talking to Orlando Anderson. He was actually taken by hotel security downstairs, and he was interrogated downstairs by hotel security. And Jesse, had you ever heard that one before? I hadn't heard that.
No.
Yeah. Kazi, had you heard that?
Never. Right? The first time you told me was when we had that private conversation the other day about it.
Yeah, it's all right under our nose, and I missed it too, which, you know, and that's what happens someday. You just miss these things. But Brent Becker, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, says that he was taken downstairs by hotel security. Now, 2 points to that. Number one, well, they have the MGM footage, so it's probably pretty easy to corroborate that was in fact the case. They have the footage. They probably know that's exactly what happened. And then the second point is, well, then you say, well, why would MGM security take Orlando? He just gave his statement to the cops, said he didn't want to press charge or anything. They're not going to arrest him. So why in the world would hotel security take him downstairs to the basement to interrogate him a little bit more? Well, there's one really good reason, and that's called liability. Okay, if you get beat up on somebody's property, and you know, I wouldn't want to make a guess that some of the people that live in that clique of people, but you know, a lot of them know about slip and falls and know about how to cash in on an injury. Well, MGM knows that too. If you get hurt on their property, there may be a legal claim that you can file for your injury and go after the casino for not having good security, for allowing it to be out of control, for not having the right safeguards in place, whatever. You might be able to get a little bit of a personal injury go away money, 10 grand, 5 grand, 20 grand to go away because you filed a personal injury claim while you were on their property. They have personal liability. So beyond whatever the police wanted to know, and they may not have wanted to know much. He wasn't interrogated by cops for a long time, but the hotel security are going to want to know a hell of a lot more about what you were doing there, why you were there, get a statement from you in a recording, and put you in that position to where you're telling them everything that happened. Because later on, if Orlando Anderson goes home or he goes to the hospital and he's hurt, he's beat up, he's got doctor's bills, $10,000, $15,000 in doctor's bills, emergency room visit, whatever, from getting hit, he may try to file a claim against MGM's insurance. So it makes 1,000% perfect sense that Brent Becker was right when he said that Orlando Anderson was taken downstairs. And by the way, that's got nothing to do with Corey Edwards' statement about a little bit later. He showed up at the bar talking about he'd been jumped by some of Suge's guys. Okay. And clearly it wasn't such a big incident that everybody at the MGM knows. You got 10,000 people inside one building. That fight took place and broke out. It was over before it started, to the point where it didn't seem to be like anybody was particularly flustered about, you know, like a traumatic experience. That Orlando Anderson shows up at this bar with Stacey Augman and a couple other people and mentions that he got jumped by some of Suge's guys. Well, I guess Corey Edwards hadn't even heard that by then, but he did. And yet that's not even taken into account. When Brent Becker says that Orlando Anderson has an alibi, he means it, because he says that, and he wouldn't say it if it weren't true, because why would he lie? That he was taken down. Oh, that's right. They don't want to solve the case. I forgot about that, Kazi. Come on, you got to remind me of that, man. They don't want to solve the case.
Is it safe to say that the person that took Orlando Anderson, that shook his hand, was hotel security? I mean, he was dressed like hotel security.
Oh, yeah. It was probably Kevin Gaines or Greg Kading or somebody else that did, you know. No, they didn't walk him when they took his hand and they led him out. They didn't lead him out to, like, take him outside and throw him outside of the building. They led him out to take him downstairs because they weren't done with him. The cops were done with him, but hotel security wasn't done with him by a long shot. So he was downstairs, and that's Brent Becker's point. If there was a Cadillac that left with the entourage from the Luxor, it wouldn't have had Orlando Anderson in it, I guarantee you, and there wouldn't have been enough time for Orlando Anderson to do the interview with the hotel security and do the things that they arguably have proof that he did, for him to make he'd be late for his own shooting. Okay, at that point. So, you know, the fact that they said they never saw him as a suspect, I don't care how bad of a guy Compton PD tried to make Orlando Anderson out to be. I mean, hey, listen, we don't know. Jesse, you don't know. I don't know. Kazi doesn't know. Orlando Anderson would have been the biggest piece of shit that ever walked the planet. We don't know. I don't know the guy. I'm not going to sit there and vouch for a guy and say he was an upstanding, fine young man, good citizen. We don't know. Maybe he did all those crazy-ass things that Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd says he did. That doesn't mean that he's your guy. Just because he's a bad guy doesn't mean he's the guy.
We haven't seen anything, though. We haven't seen any reports.
Yeah, that's right. So go ahead, Jess. Yeah. Say again.
I heard he was the Terminator.
Yes, he was.
Bodies under his boat by the time he was 15.
Well, I had heard somebody, I forget if it was Greg Kading or Keefe D or something like that, saying that they were driving all over Compton looking for somebody to shoot. That Orlando Anderson, you know, who was supposed to be testifying for Suge or something, was out driving around looking for people to shoot because he wanted to be part of the war in Compton. I can't even remember that one. That's another one of those crazy stories. But yeah, I mean, he's the Terminator. You know, and by the way, he can bend and alter time, so that way he can climb through a wormhole and get from MGM and get out to a white Cadillac or something that might be sitting at Club 662 and get in it just to drive down the street in heavy traffic and make a U-turn because he sees Tupac hanging out of the car, which he wasn't hanging out of the car from everything we know. But, you know, of course, how could he be lying about that? That's crazy. So
I'm thoroughly enjoying the live stream, but I got one more question before I jump.
Okay.
The MGM footage that we've all seen that's available on YouTube, who put that footage out?
Okay. That footage comes courtesy of David Kenner. I believe, I think arguably or allegedly that could be saying that was leaked. The MGM was not happy that footage was leaked. Again, they're worried about liability. I mean, you know, let's just say, let's be funny for a minute. And let's say, you know, when they showed that video of them all trucking out of there and Suge's like doing this bit where he's trying to, you know, get his fat ass going and get run down the hall. What if he had in the middle of doing that just tripped and fell flat on his face and broke his nose? Okay, there you go. Hotel liability. got a claim against the hotel for a personal injury. That stuff happens all the time. And there are people that make a living out of doing that and setting things up like that as a scam. So could it have happened? Yeah. So MGM protects their security. They protect the security cameras. They're a casino, for God's sake. They don't want a video of what the layout of the place looks like so people can case it. I remember the day Jesse and I were walking around taking like touristy videos of the areas and that, and security was giving us the wry eye because we were taking video. They do not like having their place videotaped. And so if you have video footage that's on their own cameras, they're not going to be happy that that's out in the public. But the reason that those clips were all put together, and that's what they were clips. Okay, they were a camera that's like, I think it's called a four-banger, where you got 4 rotating shots. They also have static cameras that have constant feed, but they have one that just flips back and forth between the 4 video feeds from 4 different locations, and they go back and forth. And an operator can actually push the buttons of what cameras he wants to see and when. They have that because Suge Knight was being tried for his probation violation that had to do with the beating at the MGM. So as evidence of that beating, to show that, yes, in fact, the beating took place, and yes, by the way, here's Suge Knight, whether or not he's involved or not, he's there, that's for sure. He's not the guy kicking a field goal, that was Buntry, but he was there. So they had to release, the MGM was required by subpoena to release that video, and they gave it to Suge Knight's team, and like our friends at the LAPD do, they leak information, and they leaked it. It's and that was in the early ages of the internet that stuff found its way out, but it did find its way out. That's how that information got out in the public. But it is by no means a complete representation of what the MGM has. I mean, they have literally freaking hundreds of cameras doing video, and they're recording everything because they have to for regulatory reasons, liability reasons, cheaters, name it. They're recording everything that happens. Like Robert De Niro said in the movie Casino, the eye in the sky sees everything. Okay. And so, yeah, when Brent Becker says Orlando Anderson didn't have time to go and do the things that they said he does, that takes Keith Davis's narrative and throws it right out the friggin' window. It's gone. It's done. I would say stick a fork in it, because that whole story can't possibly corroborate with what Vegas police are saying. So you guys are going to have to make a decision. You can believe Vegas police, or you can choose to believe, because it's convenient, that Vegas police don't know what they're talking about, and you'd rather believe the word of a convicted felon who's a known liar, and you can just go that route. Or you can believe the police actually know what they're talking about. The guy who was trying to solve a homicide knew what happened that night because they also had the videos, and he might be telling the truth. So let's see what fits you better as a person, and we'll go from there. Jess, did that answer your question?
Well, I had a follow-up.
Okay.
So we have David Kenner. He puts out some clips.
Right.
And it shows the fight with Orlando Anderson. And then you have Brent Becker, who says Orlando Anderson has an alibi.
Right.
So does anybody else have that tape, the rest of it?
The rest of the tape in terms of what happened with Orlando Anderson after the guy in the coat let him off?
Yes.
No, they wouldn't. And that I mean, Vegas PD does. That's what they subpoenaed with the grand jury. But nobody else does, because it's not relevant to Suge's beating. Nobody cares what happened after the beating took place. Nobody cares for purposes of the prosecution of Suge Knight for the beating of Orlando Anderson. Nobody cares what happened to Orlando Anderson afterwards. So it would have been, if MGM would have had to been subpoenaed, they would have only given them a limited amount of window of footage, and that would have been all they would have seen. MGM would not have given the David Kenner's team any more footage than just that. Now, did Vegas police have it? Yeah, I think so. I think the evidence is there that they've got much more. But
so by the Vegas police own admission, Orlando Anderson has an alibi, but yet they have the rest of the tape.
That's correct. Yes, it's like they're saying he has an alibi, and they have the proof, arguably, that he has an alibi. So, I mean, that's the thing. Why would you go on record as the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department? Why would you go on record and say that he had an alibi if you know factually that that's not true. Okay, because you know it will come, push will come to shove at some point, and there would have to be, especially if they were trying to prosecute somebody, that he had that. Because again, and it's a great question, and I don't, guys, if I'm getting too deep in the weeds, let me know. But here's the scoop. Let's talk about a conviction of a murderer under the standard of law, which is called guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's suppose that Vegas police finds somebody who they did it. Okay, they found their guy. They have the evidence on it. Let's just say his name. We'll just make up a name. We'll just say his name was Danny. Okay, and they found Danny, and they had Danny, and Danny goes to be tried for a murder. You have to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If there is another theory of this Orlando Anderson guy that might compete with the case that Vegas has built against Danny, well, then that is a reasonable doubt, because a jury could look at that other case and say, well, there's reasonable doubt. Maybe this guy Orlando could have done it. So what Vegas police, and this is the part of the prosecution's burden, is they have to also discount the Orlando Anderson thing, because they have to put that down to eliminate the reasonable doubt. Orlando Anderson gives reasonable doubt to the real killers. And by the way, I think that the people who have been involved with this for a long time already know that, okay? It's a legal thing. So what they have to do is Vegas police has to have not only their idea about Orlando Anderson, but they can't just walk up there and say, well, we're trying Danny because he seemed to be a better guy than Orlando Anderson was. The jury will say, well, there's reasonable doubt. Maybe Orlando Anderson could have done it. So they're holding those tapes, and they have that evidence, Jesse, because they need to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt not only that Danny did it, but that Orlando Anderson could not have done it, because that's the only way you get clear, reasonable, unreasonable doubt. Okay, if that makes sense.
Can I make a point?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Orlando Anderson has his alibi, and if people don't know, his alibi was that he was at the bar with Corey Edwards.
Well, that's one of the alibis.
One of the alibis. Okay, so
the stronger alibi is that he was taken downstairs by MGM security, and he was interviewed and interrogated for some time.
So it busts up the timeline
first.
And if he didn't have an alibi, you know, the first thing the police are going to do is go back and review that footage, and they're going to say, nope, your alibi doesn't add up. You weren't here. So then that makes him a liar. And then the case changes there. But obviously they did look at the MGM grand footage because they have it, and that never happened. So
right,
there goes to show you.
And they would have to have that footage, because if they're going to try anybody else, if they're going to prosecute any single other person, they'd prosecute me. If they wanted to prosecute me, they would still have, I'd be able to use it as a defense. Well, how do you know I did it? How do you know Orlando Anderson isn't the guy that did it? Well, they'll say, well, we know Orlando Anderson was the guy who did it because he has an alibi. And by the way, here's the video evidence and the security guards who gave statements that they went downstairs and they interviewed Orlando Anderson for an hour and a half. Okay, that's what Vegas has. And I believe the security guard statements from the MGM that interviewed them is part of the documents that Vegas isn't turning over, because it is important and it's relevant to the case.
Now, RJ, you're saying that they have it, but you're not basing that on an assumption, are you?
What, that they have what? The tapes?
Yeah, the MGM tapes, the full ones that nobody's seen.
Right. No, and in fact, I think Kazi, do you still have the evidence, the photo of the evidence tag on that? Do you have that?
It's going to take a little bit of searching just because I have several photos.
Well, that's okay. Well, we know, and if you find it at some particular point in time, you can throw it up there. But it is an absolute, yes, to Jesse's point, we know that they have it because they got it through a grand jury subpoena. They got the tapes, and they keep that tape checked into evidence. It's got a serial number. They have to barcode scan it out when somebody wants to look at it for whatever reason. They have to barcode scan them in and out. So they definitely have the tapes. And again, if Brett Becker is going to be that specific and he's going to say he was taken downstairs by hotel security and he was interviewed, and I already explained to you guys full well the reality and the likelihood of that. That just makes perfect sense. But he was taken down there. he's not going to make that kind of a statement if he doesn't know it to be a fact. And if he knows it to be a fact, just like with the security guard who talked about the Cadillac and the cop that they took a statement from about the Cadillac and the lady in the Ranger truck that they took a statement from about the Cadillac. If Brent Becker knew that those security guys took Orlando Anderson down there and that accounted for and alibied him for all that time, you don't think he's going to get a statement from those 2 security guards or 1 security guard or 5 security guards? They're going to not only have the tapes, they're going to have statements from those guys that validate that he was there, because that's what good cops do. Okay, that's what they do. And,
so
and
to summarize, the police who have said that Orlando Anderson has an alibi full well have the tapes that would prove to them that he has an alibi, and they've also in those documents it's saying that there was a Cadillac in the death row entourage leaving the Luxor.
Right, and leaving Suge Knight's house, and that it was the last one in the entourage. I mean, both witnesses point that out. They make it clear that it was the last one in the entourage. And again, because the likelihood that you would be noticed by the people that are in the front of the entourage would be very, very, very slim. I said this on the podcast. You know, if any of you have gone to a funeral and you're in line in the funeral procession, sometimes if you got to get on the freeway, you're not so tightly coupled like you are when you're just driving down the street. When you get on the freeway, you know, traffic lights change, and sometimes you have cops to help get the procession through. But when you get on the funeral on the freeway, suddenly you become 2 and 3 car lengths behind, and other cars can get in the middle. So it could really be a problem. But both of these guys noticed that at all times that the witnesses can account for, somebody made sure that Cadillac was in the last position. It was the last car in the entourage. And I'm sorry, but I can't, like the Vegas clearly didn't, I can't discount that as irrelevant. Okay, I can't discount the position of where that car was in the entourage is irrelevant, because when you talk about people, they say, oh, grand conspiracy theory, R.J. Bond's got this grand conspiracy theory, and he's out there talking about this grand conspiracy that everybody's involved with. Well, if you break it back down to it, rather than somebody trying to seeing Tupac out of the corner of their eye, traveling in the opposite direction on a packed fight night in the middle of Vegas, and by the way, on a 6-lane, Flamingo Boulevard is 6 lanes in 2 directions. That's 12 lanes of traffic. That's like being on the freeway and seeing somebody on the other side of the freeway, and seeing that person and being able to make a U-turn in the middle of that and drive up and start shooting and da-da-da. It's almost a hell of a lot easier just to be able to say, well, simplest explanation is the best. The Cadillac followed him in the entourage, and they got down to where it was 6 lanes wide open. It was quiet. Frank Alexander said it was a quiet street. He told the Vegas cops that. It was a quiet intersection, and they saw that opening on the right-hand side, and they just zoomed up to do it because they knew that Flamingo and Koval was a great opportunity because they could bust a right-hand turn and be gone like a bat out of hell afterwards.
Well, to me, that sounds like Occam's razor, and it raises a term that I heard a while ago when Battle for Compton was released, which is checkpoints.
Yeah, checkpoint. That's right. And the confession letter talks about that too. But we're not even talking about the confession letter. We're just talking about common sense. We're talking about like Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is probably the best. They can talk about gangs, but if you listen to Keith Davis's narrative and how he tries to account for where they are, well, we were at the food court. Well, no, we were at the liquor store. Oh, then we swung by Club 662. They're doing like a fucking tour of Vegas. I mean, it's like parade float at the fucking Rose Parade. You know, they're popping around and driving around, sightseeing in Vegas, you know, looking around like sharks on the prowl. Dude, what's it take for you to believe that whole cockamamie story versus there was a white Cadillac who was part of the entourage. Everybody saw it. It came up from behind entourage when there was a quiet intersection with a wide open right-hand turn lane, and boom, that was when they made the move. How, again, I said it in 30 seconds. Okay? How complicated can it possibly be? Okay? And again, this is because why? Because we're actually starting to hear from people that aren't death row people. Okay? We're starting to hear people who don't have baggage, people who don't have a dog in the hunt, people who don't care, okay, about it. So that's what we're starting to hear from, and I like it. It's refreshing, and it makes a lot of sense, okay?
Well,
honestly.
I just want to say to you, RJ, you are the only person I've known for at least minimum 10 years who's been putting out new information when it comes to the murder of Tupac Shakur. I sincerely enjoy your live streams that you're doing with JMKAZE. I suggest everybody go subscribe, check you guys out on Thursdays. And thank you so much for even including me a little bit in your investigation, RJ. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I always enjoyed our working relationship, and it's guys like you, Kazi, the fans, our knuckleheads. These people keep this show rolling. I mean, they keep this thing going, and I've got a couple of announcements that I might be making in the short-term future about some projects I'm working on. Those are exciting, but ultimately, I'm glad that you're here for the ride, Jess. I'm glad that you could come back around from it. I know you have an amazing setup where you're at and having a ball, living the life. I'm totally jealous of it. And, I just bring my horse out there. I'd be happy camper for sure. But thank you for all your help, dude. And to your audience out there, thanks for tuning in and making the show great, because that's what we're doing. We got 63 people now, so woo, we're kind of on a roll. I think at this point.
You got 63 knuckleheads.
We got 63 knuckleheads. I remember when it was 23 knuckleheads. So we got triple the knuckleheads today.
Hey,
so
just before
let's hit some questions. Well, let's hit some more questions. Damn it, we're in it this deep. This is the end of our second season on the podcast. We're going to get it, take a couple weeks off the podcast to gear up for doing season 3, but we got some time here. So let's take some questions. And Jess, I'm going to let you go. Thank you, sir, so much for everything. Or just hang tight. We'll just,
one love to the audience and one love to you and JMKAZE. You guys have a good night.
Thank you,
Hey,
Jesse.
take care, Jess.
I appreciate it, man.
You keep streaming though, and if you feel like calling back in, call in again. It's okay. All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right, bye.
Hey, I wanted to also add too. I know he had a jump, but anybody with half a brain.
Been accused of being a madman. I've been accused of being a racist. I've been accused of being a lot of things. The recent thing that I've been accused of is being what they call a culture vulture. I understand that term to mean that somebody is a vulture is a bird that picks off of dead or dying carcasses, and so it's got kind of a bad connotation there. But somebody liked the term culture and vulture, that it rhymed, so suddenly that's a bad thing. Well, for me to be a culture vulture, I'd have to actually understand what the hell your culture is. Okay, because unless, of course, they'd like to paint it with the broadest brush they can by saying I'm a racist and saying that I'm a culture vulture. But here's the bottom line. Okay, there are many cultures out there. Okay, there are cultures of people that believe that lying to cops is okay to do. Okay, and if that's your culture, I don't care about your culture. If your culture is that paying witnesses to get up on the stand and lie, and you're bribing witnesses or you're intimidating witnesses, and you think that's okay to do, then that's your culture. I don't care about your culture. If you think that committing felonies is an okay thing to do, I don't care about your culture. Okay, there's a lot of things there, and the good news is this is America. I don't have to care about your culture to solve a crime. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to solve a crime. We're trying to solve a murder investigation on somebody that was taken away, I think, arguably as a horrible thing, just like this young man that was killed by the cops, yesterday. I mean, it's a horrible thing. It's a great loss to culture. It's a great loss to that. But let's make no mistake here. I don't break away playing Tupac's greatest hits. This is an investigation of a man. He could be anybody, and we're choosing to pick this man to do the investigation on. And we care about the man, so we care about the investigation, but we care about the investigation. We don't necessarily care about the culture, because I'm not going to cater to one culture, or I'm not going to try to make one culture feel better. I'm here for everybody. Everybody's welcome. Doesn't matter what your culture is, unless you have those other cultures like lying to cops and bribing witnesses and telling people to avoid subpoenas and telling people to lie to the cops about chain snatches. If you're that person, I don't care about your culture, okay? Because you have a fucked up culture, and I don't care about it, okay? Your moral compass is skewed, okay? And I can have respect for certain things that you've done and certain things that you've accomplished in your life, and that's fine, but I don't have to agree with your culture to do a murder investigation. That's silly. So calling us a culture vulture is really kind of a non-starter. It really just, it's one of those things where it's part of the territory. It's what comes with it. But like we said at the beginning of the show, name calling is the last resort of people who have nothing else. Okay, so that's what I have to say about that. So let's see, what do we got now? We got all right. Let's say some more highs to everybody. Brandon Metcalf, welcome to the show. Stephen Perry, welcome to the show. Loose Can 88, what up? RJ Playa always says the same thing, which I like. It's a greeting that I look forward to all the time. Brandon Metcalf says Reggie should be ignored. Reggie should have ignored the caddy bait. He made no case of innocence. Well, yeah, I don't know that particular offering of that information really made anybody feel better about that. That's for sure. So let's see here. Simon Young, welcome to the show. Let's see here. Jake Stiles says, hey, you heard what they said about your documents about the Cadillac. Well, they didn't really say much about the documents. They can't argue with the documents, but they just said that, yeah, there was a Cadillac that Death Row leased. And, that's all. So let's see here. Let's jump down here. Oh, there's a lot of comments. Holy crap. Yeezy's here. Welcome to the show, Yeezy. I'm glad you got here. Glock Magic 88. Welcome to the show. Otis Trailer. Man, all the knuckleheads are piled up today. I'm glad you're here. Michael West, welcome to the show. Stephen Perry says MGM security walking out Orlando looked like Reggie Sr. Yeah, I know. I've heard that before. It does. It looks like him. But honestly, the simplest explanation is the best. You don't have to look for a grand conspiracy here. If Vegas police says that after they were done talking to Orlando Anderson, he was walked downstairs into the security offices by hotel security. I gave you a perfectly rational reason why they would have done that. It's pretty standard protocol. Many, 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 many years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I worked security for a shopping mall. I was Paul Blart mall cop, I think, at that time. But when there was an incident at the mall and you were a security guy, somebody fell, somebody got into an altercation, you would go and you would get that person, you bring that person to the security office, and you would sit down and fill out an incident report with them, because there is a potential liability on the part of the mall when somebody gets hurt. Okay, that just makes sense. When you do that, you fill out that form. You ask them about what happened. You ask them why, so they don't come back on you later about that. And by the way, speaking of malls, if there was an altercation at the Foot Locker, let's go back to that Lakewood Mall thing, there would have been mall security people. And if there had been racks being knocked over and people pushing each other and fighting in one of the stores in the mall, there would have been reports there. I was working as a mall security guard before the Lakewood Mall event happened, so I know that people were taking reports when there was an incident at a mall. Mall security was involved, and that was in the 80s. So we're talking about 10-something years later. I know that that's what normal procedure is at most of these joints. So that's why Greg Kading had to move the narrative outside of the mall, because even he knew that, okay? And so, again, and I know the jokes will come. Okay, Paul Blart, I get it. Okay, but the reason I mention that is that way back when, in the 80s, when I was, basically a kid, you work security, there's an incident that happens on your property, you take an incident report. That's just what is normal required of the job. So when Brent Becker says Orlando Anderson was taken down by mall security and interviewed at some length, which I imagine he probably was, and it doesn't sound to me like if they had hospital records from the guy, from Orlando Anderson, that he went to Sunrise Hospital and got checked into the hospital. Oh, that's right. We didn't mention that, did we, JM?
No.
Did we talk about?
No, but I was going to mention that you were talking about. You were a security guard. You were there. Weren't you there that night on September 7th in the MGM?
That's right. Yes, I was driving around my mobile scooter, and I pulled over and popped on my Las Vegas Metropolitan uniform, and that I keep in the closet, and I went in there. Yes, I was there, of course, sure. Not
touch on the hospital incident. Did we have a report for that? I'm trying to remember if we had it.
We do. It's actually in that. You have that tab there where it says grand jury subpoenas. You've got that one up there. You also have another shot where it talks about the Orlando Anderson's injuries, and it talks about Orlando Anderson, according to these documents, went to Sunrise Hospital for some reason. I mean, I'm guessing it had to do with the beating. I mean, why would he go to the hospital? You know, I don't think he'd go there to, you know, take a piss test or whatever. But he went to the hospital. He was checked into the emergency room. They have those records of that. They got those records, I think, from the grand jury as well, Orlando Anderson's records, from his visit to Sunrise Hospital. Because we had a couple of live shows ago, I think we even talked about it, where we were saying, well, he definitely didn't go to University Hospital because that's where Death Row and all them were. He's going to go to the other hospital in Vegas, which is Sunrise, and go get checked in there. So we don't know when he went to the downstairs to the MGM, man, he may have been feeling it. And when he got up to where Corey Edwards was at the bar, he went up there. He could have been, that pain could have been setting in at that point because it had been an hour or so, maybe two. And that pain could have been setting in. The next thing he does, he goes to the hospital. Now, wouldn't that be a freaking humdinger if Orlando Anderson happened to be at Sunrise Hospital when the shooting took place? Ooh, didn't think about that one.
No, but before you add your point, I want to just give a big thank you, big shout out to Gerardo Lanticos.
Gerardo!
Hey, he's
man, you gave us
he gave a super chat, a big super chat last live stream,
Thank
and
you.
I really appreciate that. So any question you have, Gerardo, please ask RJ. He's the person with the wealth of knowledge here. I'm just the Batman to the Robin here.
Fire away, man. Fire away. Let's see. So let's see here. Glock Magic 88 said, I just heard about the estate reforming. Yeah, we can talk about that for a quick second. The estate has always been Tom Wally has always been in charge of the estate. He basically was running it for Afeni. She was kind of the figurehead of everything and tried to dabble a little bit with the Shakur Foundation stuff and all that over on the side with Glow. But she was always kind of in the background there. You know, Tupac had a very famous statement, "Don't let my mom handle my money." And, you know, there's a lot of people that can testify that he said that. But ultimately, Afeni took it over. And then when she died, she left control of the estate to Tom Wally. And a lot of people don't know who Tom Wally is. They're like, oh, that was Tom Wally. Tom Wally was actually very instrumental in Tupac even getting a start in the music business because Tom Wally managed TNT Records, or I maybe owned TNT Records. I'll have to double check, but he was definitely a main player at TNT Records, which was where Digital Underground had their recording contract and got Tupac involved with it. And TNT Records was really where Tupac got his start with Adrian Gregory and all that. So Tom Wally has literally been around since Tupac was nobody. And he has always been a voice there. I know he went away because Afeni got a bunch of attorneys and some other people involved, especially right after Tupac got killed. She brought a bunch of other attorneys there. And for many years, Dina LaPolte and some other people kind of ran the estate. And those attorneys really threw a lot of people off to the wayside. And they really, I don't say they pissed them off, but it was very distasteful to work with them, very unpleasant to work with them. I'm speaking from personal experience. Some of the attorneys were very unpleasant to work with. So Tom Wally kind of stepped aside after a period of time when Afeni broke ties with those other attorneys in that group of people. She went back to Tom Wally. And when she died, she left control of the estate to Tom Wally. They are doing things like paying Gobi for his footage, and they're doing what they can because they're trying to do this long in the making documentary about Tupac. And we'll see how that goes for sure. So that's the shape of the estate as we speak right now. And Stephen Perry, I would tend to agree with that statement about scamming the fans. Didn't Gobi do a GoFundMe campaign or a Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah, he certainly did.
For that. And I don't know how much money he made, but depending on if it's GoFundMe or Kickstarter, one makes you have to give everything back. If you don't meet your goal, everybody gets their money back. But there's the other one, and the other one says if you raise $2,000, you get to keep it. Okay?
Yeah.
And I think that that's the one that he used. I can't be sure of that, so I'll say allegedly that's the one that Gobi used to raise money to make his movie. And the movie never got made, but I know there was at least $1 that was donated to his GoFundMe page. I do know that because I remember looking at it thinking, man, this guy's raising money for it. Wow, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's it seems to be popular these days, the GoFundMe, and I understand people use it. You know, especially if you're trying to get money to pay your commissary or, pay your fines or whatever. So yeah, GoFundMe is a good resource.
Yeah. Ryan Gregory, welcome to the show. Ryan Gregory says, where was Pac when he was standing around in that green jersey? Somebody had a video camera. Well, yeah, there was a lot of people that had video cameras. We are seeing some footage come out from inside the MGM. Pac, that was after the fight. I think that was actually because he changed. He wasn't in the green jersey. He changed into the green jersey when he went to the Luxor to change clothes. I don't know. The timing of that's all off. He was talking to the green jersey. He was killed in that same outfit. That was the outfit he was killed in. So I'm not sure if that was earlier in the evening. I don't really know, to be honest with you. And it would be interesting to see where that lands. I mean, I don't remember when he was doing 50 blows. He certainly wasn't wearing the green jersey. But that doesn't mean also, though, that he wasn't wearing the green jersey earlier that night. Frank Alexander said that they all had to change clothes for the fight. Tupac had to go upstairs and they had to change clothes. So it is possible that earlier in the evening around 6 when it was dark, it was still dark. Pac could have been in the green outfit talking to girls or talking to somebody outside of the MGM. And then they all went back to the Luxor to change their clothes and get ready for the night's activities, where Pac changed into the 50 blows outfit, and then they went back again and changed their clothes, and he may have changed back into the green jersey. I don't know. I'll work that one out. I'm gonna put a big thing here that says green jersey ? And we'll see what we can get on the details of that for sure. Period. All right. Let's see here. Yeezy 808 Glock, read a book, bro. All right. So let's see here. Excuse me. Michael West says Kenner absolutely sent Suge to jail. He was supposed to be dead, but Tupac took the hit, so they switched the plan up. Well, I think there's a lot of credibility to that. I'll say Death Row East says Vegas should have worked with LAPD to set up surveillance on T. Brown to put him in the same predicament as Keefe D, but they never pursued him. Well, that's because I think if I'm understanding Death Row East, I think I'm understanding you correctly. T. Brown was the narrative that Greg Kading was pushing. Isn't that right, Kazi? Was T. Brown? Was that Bubble Up Brown, Terrence Brown, that was supposed to be one of the guys in the car with Orlando Anderson?
Yeah, he was supposed to be the driver. He actually got killed in 2015.
Well, why would Vegas, here's my question, Death Row East, why would Vegas, if they already knew Orlando Anderson had an alibi and they knew that whole story was crap, why would they work with LAPD on anything? LAPD was just as bad as Compton was to try to throw a guy under the bus that they knew had an alibi. I mean, think about that. If you're Vegas police and you go there and they're trying to shove Orlando Anderson in front of you and say, this is the guy, and you look at it and be like, we already know the guy's got an alibi. Now, are you going to tell those guys that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Because again, if there are people that are suspects of interest, and we showed that letter from the Las Vegas police, that they don't want to talk about certain things and they don't want to comment on the investigation because they're concerned that it would alert, and that's the word they used, alert persons of interest. So that's really important there. So I don't know why Vegas would work with LAPD on anything, because LAPD kept trying to shove a narrative that they knew wasn't even something they were looking at. So, that's the thing. So, all right. So let's see here. Excuse me. All right. Michael West says the Cadillac could have been Nate Dogg's. The Dog Pound guys always had those cars. Lil Half Dead had one in one of his music videos. That is a very perceptive comment, Michael West. I would put a thumbnail in it, or if you want to put a bookmark in it, bookmark it, because I think that's definitely something to take a look at. Otis Trailer, welcome to the show. Daniel Hayes, welcome.
Hey, thanks, JMix. JMix gave us a super chat. We appreciate that, JMix.
Nice. Thank you, JMix. Thank you. Always good. Look at that, a participant and a super chat. Thank you very much. See, everybody, take a lesson from JMix. All right, so and I'm sorry. That means that maybe he could chip off some of the meth that he sold. I don't know. Well, meth money. Death Row says Corey Edwards needs to be interviewed by somebody other than A&E. He knows when it went down. Death Row East, I agree with you 100%. But what's interesting is you go back and you look at the history of Corey Edwards. other than that really chopped up interview, and I never did get into the whole thing about when you edit something that you can edit a conversation and you have to show a reverse shot, because you notice he's talking and then suddenly for no reason A&E suddenly reverses the shot and they edit to a shot of the back of their heads walking away from the camera. Well, you do that because your sound is going to be out of sync, because you can't cut the video and still show the guy talking because his lips aren't going to match what's being said. So you cut to the reverse shot. That's a dead giveaway for anybody who's ever done any editing. It's editing 101. It's a dead shot that the audio was edited, was cut. So no matter how smooth it sounds, that when Corey Edwards is talking and then they cut to the reverse, something is being manipulated there. That they didn't do that just for looks, because nobody likes to look at the back of somebody's fucking head. Okay, they'd rather see what the guy is saying. Okay, so what are we looking at here? This is the this is the witness who saw the Cadillac there. And again, you know, since we're talking about narratives, okay, since we're talking about things that were put out there in Keith Davis's statement of events that weren't true, one of the big things about this particular witness statement was that, you know, you had a lady that came forward a year later because she read something in the newspaper that Kathy Scott had written, and so to everybody's surprise, Kathy Scott was wrong about something. And when she went to the police, she called them and said, hey, you know, they got this information wrong. And they said, well, how do you know it was wrong? And she said, because I was there. And she explained that she was in the position in front of the Cadillac. She was in her Ford Ranger, and she was in front of the Cadillac making a right-hand turn on Koval to go down Koval. I guess they were going to a bar down there or something. And she saw the white Cadillac come up out of the back of the rearview mirror, heard the shots, and she beat feet to, because she was already executing the right-hand turn. But she said that that Cadillac came around that corner so fast that she had to pull over to the side of the road to get away from it. And when she did that, the thing went zooming right past her. So she was stopped when that Cadillac went zooming right past her. She says it passed within 2 feet of where she was at. Okay? Well, the important thing to know about that is if there had been another car giving chase, she would have noticed that. She would have said something about it. And Lord knows, had there been any shooting at all, okay, if there'd been any shooting at all, there would have definitely been a certainly the witness would have said something about that. She would have said, oh my God, they almost ran me over, and I'm glad I didn't pull back out again because I'd have been hit by the car that was chasing them. And oh my God, there were shots fired. And just like Keefe D said, like the OK Corral, shots being fired everywhere. Okay, gunshots going off everywhere. So again, that's what's important about this particular statement, that the witness did come forward. And this is something that nobody had heard before. You had all the other cars kind of accounted for, but they were mostly death row people again. And now we have somebody who's not a death row people. I actually think that she might know more than what she let on in this statement. Kazi kind of thinks that too, because she was, you know, she had other witnesses in the car with her, and she was a little sketchy on whether or not she had seen the people in the car. But when you come within 2 feet of a car, you're probably going to see who's in the car. Okay. So I would say that she probably knew a little bit more, but she learned enough and knew enough to give the police good, solid information. So the big takeaway from this season of the podcast is that we've come into control of some documents that really actually do change a lot of the narrative. It definitely blows the Orlando Anderson narrative way out of the water. I mean, and if it's not dead, it's on life support at this point, because I don't know how anybody like a Greg Kading, of course, they can do it by the nah defense, which is just to dismiss it and say that either Brent Becker didn't know what he was talking about, that the LAPD is smarter than the Vegas Police Department. They'd like to think that they don't know how to solve crimes. And then the latest I've heard from the other side, that Vegas just didn't want to solve a crime because it was supposed to be a family place like that. So again, you know, there's certainly a hey,
I don't want to cut you off, RJ, before
Yeah.
I lose my place here. I just want to thank Whiskey the Don for his super chat as well.
Whiskey to Don, welcome to the show. What is up?
He has a question for you too.
Okay, well, you know what? Because he does. What is his question? Because I ain't got there yet.
His question is, does Corey Edwards have a full timeline alibi, or is it possible he could have been in the Cadillac?
Okay, well, Whiskey to Don, that's a great question. Corey Edwards' statement to the Vegas police, okay, his official statement to the Vegas police has nothing to do with any time that if he places himself in it, he would have no time to get in a Cadillac, especially if we happen to be talking about the Cadillac that may have been in the entourage at the last car in the entourage. Corey Edwards wouldn't have had anything to do with that. And he kind of did have an alibi because he had Stacey Ogman there, who was the retired NBA player, and he named it by name. When you name check people, that's a dangerous thing to do. When you name check people, that means the cops can go to that other person and say, is that what happened? If you're going to name, I mean, okay, now think about this, guys, for a minute, okay? This is where you put your thinking cap on. Think, knuckleheads. If you're the Vegas cops and a witness says that a retired NBA player was there talking with you when Orlando Anderson came in and sat down at the bar, okay? Think. How hard do you think a retired NBA player is to get in touch with if you're the police, okay? They talked about a lot of death row people moving around and stuff like that. And a retired NBA player has an agent or they have a sports agent. They can be gotten a hold of, and it would be very easy for them to talk to Stacey Ogman and get a statement from Stacey Ogman which would corroborate what Corey Edwards had to say. Now, you say, well, maybe that happened, maybe that didn't happen. Well, we're not going to know. Vegas is holding 1,900 pages of documents still. So we don't know if they did or didn't follow up on that lead. We don't know that for sure. I would like to think that if they're, and I think they were interested in solving the murder, that if they were interested, that would have been the natural thing to do. If what's his name is going to fact check, Corey Edwards is going to name check Stacey Ogman, they're going to talk to Stacey Ogman because he's certainly a pretty good witness, wouldn't you think? He was there. They would ask him for his thing, and again, he's not hard to get a hold of, so they would do that. But are they going to release that? No, because again, it's not just the evidence that they have to point to somebody who they think might be responsible for it, but they need that evidence to make sure they have an airtight alibi for Orlando Anderson, that they have not just Corey Edwards, they have Stacey Ogman, they have whoever he might have been with, other people that were there that all placed Orlando Anderson at a particular time of night at that bar, and that would have been after the hour or so, maybe hour and a half time that he was down being interrogated by security. So just remember, okay, that you guys have to think it through. And Whiskey to Don, because I know you've been a huge contributor to the show, and I appreciate everything that you contribute to the show on a weekly basis. Good thinking, but I don't think that Corey Edwards could have ever been in a Cadillac, because first off, we'd have to identify what Cadillac we're talking about, and the only Cadillac that I know anybody has really identified is the Cadillac that was in the entourage. This other Cadillac that Keith Davis claims to be driving around, it's all kind of predicated on statements of people that were death row people or people that have conflicting statements. So again, it's a little bit harder to prove that Corey Edwards was in the Cadillac at all. And another reason why I think Keith Davis' story and the Orlando Anderson thing is on life support at this point. So all right,
flatlining soon.
Yeah, EMD anal, or I don't know, endemol, is that emdanal? I don't know what the name is there. Is it true Frank wanted to apologize for what he put Reggie through to make money for assassination DVDs? Okay, no agenda there, is it? No, Frank didn't want to apologize for anything that he put Reggie through. I've got lots of emails that I could share that specifically state what Frank's opinion was about Reggie, and yes, I will say that. Now, as far as Kevin Hankey goes, and as far as that, it's always amazing to me when people put their best foot forward to them, and it's used and it's trotted out there as a sign of weakness. See, he was wrong because he wanted to apologize to me. No, I think that there may have come a time when you have to let the police officers do the investigation. You have to let them do that. You have to let the facts fall where they are. You don't necessarily want to start off with it's this person and let me tell you why. Okay, that's kind of a dangerous way to do things. And so if there was any kind of conversation that I would see Frank Alexander having with Reggie. And again, not calling Reggie a liar, not saying that a conversation didn't happen, okay? But, Reggie hasn't exactly been spot on with all of his recollections about things, okay? He was trying to say that there was shots being fired back and forth between the cars until Mob James said, no, there weren't. And, oh, no, maybe there wasn't. I don't know. But, the fact that Kevin Hackey said, leave things in the past, don't bring them up anymore. I'll help you, whatever I can do, because these are people that would like to see the past stay in the past. I don't think Kevin Hackey likes talking about it very much. I don't think Frank liked talking about it. And at one point, Frank is a religious person. Frank was a Christian. He believed in, Paul in the Bible killed Christians. I mean, he was a killer. And so I guess according to God, even killers can be forgiven and then they move on. Doesn't mean they're not responsible for what they did. Doesn't mean they don't pay the price for what they did, but forgiveness is definitely there. So if there was any talk about forgiveness, or if there was any talk about apologies or anything like that, it would have been in the spirit of, let's keep the past in the past. Let's let it go in the past. I wasn't there. So, and neither were you. And so whatever we get from one side of the story, like I said, though, up until the day he died, I have lots of very choice emails about what Frank's position was on a lot of things. Let's just leave it at
RJ, can you
that.
do me a favor?
Okay.
Can you show me the evidence? Show me the letters, the papers. Can you just do a grade cading for me real quick?
Oh, yeah. These right here. See, all these papers. Wait, I gotta organize. Oh, see, I'm losing them. Losing the papers. They're all the. Oh wait. Oh, we got more here. We got more papers. This is the napkin from the bar at the MGM where Orlando Anderson drank a drink with Corey Edwards. There it is.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Gotta throw it in there.
See?
Sometimes this gets a little too serious. I gotta go at a different spin sometimes.
Yeah, that's all right. So anyway, well, listen. Let's see here. Yep, CDT kind of, I'm going to use this as the summary for the evening. CDT said, and welcome to the show, said, okay, all the people that died that were involved in the case knew something or were involved in it. I think that's probably true. I mean, again, Frank Alexander was a witness. Michael Moore was there. He wasn't an eyewitness. Michael Moore was a circumstantial witness. There were a lot of people that were around that could testify to things that were going on, but we do have real witnesses that have stepped forward, like the cop that was there that saw the cream color Cadillac. And again, if you want to blow it off, and that's what I say, if you want to blow it off and take the position like, oh, big deal. Oh, big deal. There were a lot of white Cadillacs. Oh, we had a white Cadillac. Or we had a cream color Cadillac. Oh, yeah, that's no big deal. That's what the guy saw. We had a white color Cadillac. Oh, okay. Well, remember, Reggie Wright wasn't there. Reggie Wright wasn't part of the entourage. Reggie Wright wasn't at the crime scene. Reggie Wright wasn't at the killing scene. Reggie Wright was at Club 662 listening to things over the radio with Michael Moore. Okay? So he doesn't officially know who was in the entourage, who wasn't. He picks up everything like everybody else does. The only reason that Reggie Wright might know who's in the entourage is because Reggie Wright knew who was in the entourage, if you get my meaning. But ultimately, you listen to a guy and he says, yeah, Death Row had a white Cadillac. Okay, so I don't think that helps your case, but it's out there. So, but again, you can choose to, and I'm giving you, it's a free country. You can choose to think that that's got nothing to do with anything, that the fact that there was a cream-colored Cadillac in the entourage, leaving the Luxor, going to Suge's house, left Suge's house as part of the entourage. Both times they made a point of being the last car in the entourage, okay? And then minutes after, 20 minutes, 25 minutes after they leave Suge's house, there just happens to be a Cadillac that's involved in the shooting. Coincidence? Maybe, but I kind of doubt it. And I think Vegas does too, because if it's not Orlando Anderson, then who is it? Who killed Tupac? Right? That's all I got for tonight.
All right. Well, it's been 1 hour and 45 minutes. I know you want to do the 4-hour marathon, but not tonight. Next time we'll do it next time. So I just wanted to leave you guys with everything that you saw tonight on the document. Go back and watch the replay. Tuesday, Spotify, iTunes for the podcast. It'll be on hiatus for the next 2 weeks as we get things together. And then also, I just want to give the shout outs to the people that came in tonight to support the channel. And I'll go down. I'll do half, RJ, and if you want to do the other half, that'll be helpful. Defro East, Daniel Hayes, Gerardo, of course, CDT, JMix, as always. Appreciate you stopping by and lending us your Tupac wisdom. It's always appreciated. Risky the Don, of course, thank you for being here tonight. And also for the super chat.
And the super chat. And the super chat.
Yeah, everybody that gave a super chat tonight, I appreciate it. Thank you. Cypress Gardens, Suge Knight TV, Michael West, Thomas Mays, Esler TV, and then Big 21. I'll go ahead and let you finish off, RJ, if you want to go ahead and.
Well, by the way, Tammy Frazier, I missed this one. I went whoop right past everything. Jumped to the comments. Tammy Frazier, welcome to the show. Tammy Frazier says MTV News put out an article in 1996 saying the same thing, that the man Pac fought was not suspect because he was still detained by security. Tammy Frazier, if you can find... All right, knuckleheads, you have a job. You have a mission if you choose to accept it. All knuckleheads, go look through MTV News and try to see if you can find an MTV News article that says that. That's your mission, should you choose to accept it. And we got some sharp dudes out there. So if anybody can find that, you guys can. That was great. Tammy Frazier. Pokerface2116, welcome to the show. Ryan Gregory, welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. Royal Family, thank you for tuning in. Okay. Again, let's see here. I'll even thank the haters. I'll thank the EMDANAL. I don't even know. Somebody's going to have to try to pronounce that.
I buy houses. I'm sorry. I forgot him too. He's always.
Yeah, I buy houses, of course.
Supporter.
One of the original knuckleheads. Big shout out there. Daniel Hayes there. And guys, you know what? If I've missed you, we love you anyway. We'll catch you. And then, by the way, RJ Bond, what I know at Outlook.com. You can send me an email and call me an a-hole because I forgot to mention you on the show. Okay? Fair enough? We can do that? All right. Because we're family. This is what we do. All right, guys? That's all, man. That's all I got. And my wife has made a wonderful meal, and I think I'm going to go eat.
What did she make tonight?
It was, and the name just dropped right out of my head. It's an Italian dish, which is good because I need to gain more weight,
okay.
For sure. But yes, it's going to be nice and toasty, and we're going to Otis Trailer. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
Well, maybe next time we can get Olive Garden to be one of our sponsors.
And East Yesler TV, I do not hate anybody. That's the thing. I don't. Again, I can think people are cuckoo, but I don't hate, and I don't call names like that. So anyway, more later, guys. Stay tuned. We got a lot more for you, and from all of us here, and from RJ Bond, man, I am out. Take care,
RJ.
guys.
Take care, man. All right, good show tonight. I'm going to go ahead and change up the scene here. And I do want to let you know that we do have a special guest, that somebody who's been deciding to come on to the show, and hopefully we get them there. I'll share with you a report. We may have not seen this one yet, but RJ can talk about that one later on a future podcast. It's not any secret. It was a report, Tupac report, so you can kind of read through that. And I just want to thank again everybody for stopping in tonight. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. And I do want to make a statement. There are a few people that come into the chat room that believe a different alternate theory, and they're always welcome. I mean, nobody attacks them. Nobody puts down their ideal. I don't. I mean, if they believe Orlando Anderson killed Tupac, more power to you. So it's fine with me, and that's a good thing. You're not going to come over here and get kicked out because you have a disagreement or alternative theory. So that's that. And we got 52 people left. I don't think anybody wants to hear me, so I'm going to go ahead and I know that sometimes I can go on a tangent and talk a bit, but when we do our projects, it's it's well thought out, and we kind of go through it, rehearse everything that we're going to talk about. As far as we don't just want to come out here and just throw things out and not really go through it through and through. So generally, when I used to do videos before, I would build my timelines, and then of course do a little bit of author it or whatnot, to narrate it and things of that nature. But since we're on this podcast as a tandem, basically we just talk about different things, and I chime in every now and again. But I mean, RJ is the one that has in-depth knowledge, and of course, me, I'm still learning about things, and I appreciate being able to at least learn from somebody who has gone through great lengths to get all the sources that they need. And that's the thing, is that we're especially him, we'll give him credit. He's bringing out all the documents. He's getting these documents. I mean, if we think about it, for the last couple of years, yeah, we've had stories, kind of trivial stories about Tupac's life, just different things that don't really move the ball in any direction. I'm not saying that this is going to move the ball in any direction, but you never know. This could spark something, an ember for the Las Vegas Metropolitan PD to say, hey, you know what, these guys, everybody besides us, they're shaking these trees, and basically let's see if we can at least go through the evidence again, because you gotta ask yourself, they've probably, and I'm gonna assume this, they have not gone through these files, and they have not gone through them in the last few years, if I had to guess. It's not like every year they open up the door to the vault and say, okay, we're gonna look at every piece of evidence in here, and we're gonna try to re-examine it and see if we can find new details or whatnot. And what these reports are, they're just kind of little gems that you can kind of read for yourself, and you can only imagine if the police officers, detectives actually put real effort into trying to reopen this again, that they would be able to go back and kind of look at it and kind of say, you know what, this is important, this is something we didn't recognize before and whatnot. So that is just the synopsis of everything. So I intend to make some videos, narrations, and things like that for some other Tupac projects that I want to do. And but I've had a blast doing this with RJ, as far as the podcast on Spotify, and then also the live streams on Thursday. And I understand that people believe that this whole, and I'll address it, and I'll make it really quickly, about the whole, it's thrown out there, it's very colorful, the whole culture vulture thing. And the thing about it is that, if you really think about it, in YouTube, there's not a whole lot of money in YouTube, unless you're like one of these really popular creators has over 100,000 subs or whatnot, and you're getting these massive amounts of views as soon as you drop a video. That's when you're making a lot of money, But when you're doing this, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the Tupac content is not paying a lot of money. It might have paid a lot of money back when, and that's before Google started their censorship. But now, no, not at all. Because if you think about it, if you make videos, then you know that you go through everything that is in fine print there when you go into the YouTube, and it asks you, this is appropriate for children, and it does it have any violence, it does it have any mild, cussing, whatever. I'm not giving you verbatim. I'm just telling you all these things. You have to answer all these questions, and if your video doesn't meet one of their criterias, then it can't get monetized. So essentially, the only way you're making money, and here's the thing, I don't ever ask anybody for money, but the way YouTubers are going to make money, they're going to do it through Patreon or PayPal or Cash App or whatever avenue of monetization you can think of. That's what they go through. And I don't fault anybody that does ask for donations, and here's the reason why I don't fault them. And the reason why I don't fault them is because it takes a lot of time to put intellectual thought into making a video, putting it together, and rendering it, and spending days or whatever, weeks putting this together. And some people, a pat on the back is not enough, so they want to get paid. So I understand it. So I don't fault anybody for doing that, and that's just it. So it's capitalism. You got to make money here and there. And the way I think of it is, why does anybody have to say that you can't do this or you can't do that because you're not part of this culture? That's just, to me, that's a form of censorship, because I'm Hispanic, all right, but I think that I don't need anybody telling me that I can't do this or I can't do that. I can cross the lines as long as I'm doing it in a creative way, in a respectful way. Then why shouldn't I be able to keep Tupac's name alive? I should be able to do that. That's my right. I'm not here to be guarded. I'm not here to be, put on the leash to say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Okay, so, and I have a lot of friends from every race you can think of. Okay, and I respect everybody. I think the element of what maybe people were thinking about is just the criminal element, and I get it. Everybody has their past. I had my past before, but obviously I got over it, grew up, and moved on. Okay. Now people will say, well, this guy wasn't this or this guy wasn't that, because now I'm proper, and I'm not the same fool that I was 20 years ago. I'm an intelligent man now. I went to college. I went to military. I did things. I'm not gonna go through my whole life story, but I've done a lot of things in my life. But I don't need somebody to tell me that I can't do this or I can't do that, especially when they're not in a position to tell me. So I'll leave it at that. I just want to kind of just give a little bit of thought on that, something for you to think about. If anybody ever tells you can't do something, you certainly are in a free country to do whatever you want. So I think that's it. The document that's on there, I'll go ahead and blow it up. Well, no, I can't blow it up, but well, I can. Let me go ahead and blow it up for you guys so you can see it. If you can't see it, make it a little larger for you. And that was a report in regards to attempted murder or something with Tupac evidence or whatnot. So you can go ahead and take a look at that before we wrap it up for today. And that's it. So, like I said, we're going to take 2 weeks hiatus so we can kind of go back to the drawing board. And there's several hundreds of more documents that are still out there that are going to be released in the future. We're working on other things, so be on the lookout for that. The Spotify thing is still going to be there. And then also the live stream on Thursday. So we're just trying to keep it in perspective for everybody. We're just trying to bring out the content for you guys to, look at it, and you make your own evaluation on what you believe is who could have been involved. If you think this person was involved or you think that person was involved, then that's okay. The only thing that I can't do responsibly is accuse anybody of murder. And I haven't ever done that. I have had people that come on the channel and say, oh, you accuse this person, you accuse that. I like for anybody to show me where I've ever had in writing that I've ever written that before. And I haven't ever done that. Kind of keep those things safely guarded, close to my vest. And that's it. Obviously, it doesn't matter who I think murdered Tupac. They're probably never going to be brought to justice anyways. So anyhow, that's it. I just want to thank everybody for being here. Eastchester, yeah, go look at his channel. It's certainly blowing up. I remember when you had very little subscribers, and now you're plateauing. You're on your way. So go check out his stuff, and hopefully he gets you start live streaming. And yes, I do care about everybody's culture. Everybody's. The only thing I can't get down with is the criminal element. That's the only thing I can't get down with, because obviously I live a different life now. I live a different path. And yeah, I have friends of mine that are still living that same life, but I have to keep my distance because I got other things that are more important to me than keeping it real, so to speak. You know what I mean? So but I still have connections, to certain people, and I don't want to exercise anything. I'm just saying that, like everybody else, you have a right to defend yourself, and I'll leave it at that. So anyhow, everybody take care. And as I always mention, always seek the truth, no matter where it takes you. Good night. Thank you, Tammy Frazier. Good night, JMix. Good night, y'all.